Hello and welcome. I'm so glad you've chosen to join me here in our quiet corner of history tonight. Whether you're settling in for the evening, looking for a peaceful end to a long day, or are already on the verge of sleep, I hope our journey tonight brings you some calm. As always, I'm curious to know where you're listening from. It's a quiet wonder to think of this community drifting off to sleep all around the world. If you'd like, feel free to leave a comment with your city or country. And if this style of storytelling is what you're looking for, I'd be honored if you'd subscribe to the channel. But for now, let all the noise and pressures of the modern world fade away. Let your breathing slow and your mind settle. Tonight, we are stepping behind the grand portraits and into the private chambers of royalty. We're going to explore a practice that seems strange and unsettling to us today, but was once a cornerstone of power. We are going to calmly and quietly understand why, for centuries, royal families married their own relatives. Before we can begin to understand the strange and intricate web of royal intermarriage, we must first let go of our modern ideas about family, love, and genetics. We must travel back to a time when the world was governed by a different set of fundamental truths, and none was more powerful than the idea of blood. Not blood in the simple biological sense, but blood as a mystical substance, a sacred essence, the very medium of power and divinity. Tonight, we begin by exploring this core belief, the absolute necessity of keeping the royal bloodline pure. Imagine, for a moment, that you are not who you are. Imagine you are a monarch in an ancient land. You wake not in your familiar bed, but in a chamber of stone and silk, attended by servants who do not meet your gaze. When you look in a mirror of polished bronze, the face you see is not just a face. It is the living embodiment of a dynasty. The blood that flows through your veins is not ordinary. It is a river of history, a direct and unbroken current flowing from the gods themselves, or at the very least, from a heroic founder chosen by heaven. This is not a metaphor to you. It is a literal truth. You are not merely human. You are a vessel, a temporary guardian of a sacred substance that has been passed down, pure and undiluted, for generations. Your primary duty, above all others, above ruling, above waging war, above dispensing justices, to safeguard this essence, to pass it on to your heir as pure as you received it. Any mixing of this blood with that of a lesser being, a commoner, or even a lower noble, would be a catastrophe. It would be an act of spiritual contamination, a dilution of the very magic that makes you a king. It would be a betrayal of your ancestors and a theft from your descendants. And so, when it comes time for you to marry, you do not look for love, or compatibility, or even beauty. You look for purity. You look for a partner whose blood is as close as possible to the divine quality of your own. And in many cases, the only person who fits that description is your own sister. Nowhere was this belief held more strongly or practiced more literally than in the ancient sun-drenched kingdom of Egypt. Let us drift down the Nile to the court of the Pharaoh. The Pharaoh is not just a king. He is a living god. He is Horus on earth, the son of Osiris, the embodiment of divine order. The gods themselves provided the blueprint for his life. In the great cosmic myth of Egypt, the god of the afterlife, Osiris was married to his sister, the goddess of magic, Isis. Together they ruled. their union a perfect divine circle. For the pharaoh to maintain his status as a god on earth, he had to live as the gods lived. His marriage was not a personal affair. It was a state ritual, a reenactment of the divine order. Therefore, the most suitable, most powerful, and most logical consort for a pharaoh was his own full or half-sister. This was not seen as incestuous. It was seen as sacred. A marriage between the pharaoh and his sister was a joining of two divine halves, a consolidation of celestial power. Their children would be of the purest possible divinity, their right to rule unquestionable. Imagine the ceremonies in the great temples of Karnak or Luxor. The air is thick with the sweet, heavy scent of incense and burning offerings. The walls are covered in hieroglyphs telling the stories of the gods and the pharaoh's divine lineage. The pharaoh and his sister bride, both adorned in gold and brilliant lapis lazuli, stand before the priests. They are not seen as brother and sister, but as earthly manifestations of Osiris and Isis. Their union is a cosmic event, a reaffirmation of the divine structure of the universe. The royal women of Egypt held immense power through this system. The pharaoh's sister was often known by the title God's wife, a position of great religious and political importance. The queen's primary role was to provide an heir whose divinity was as pure and concentrated as possible. A son born of a lesser wife, one from outside the immediate royal family, might be a prince, but a son born of the pharaoh's own sister was a god in waiting. This practice continued for thousands of years, a testament to the enduring power of this belief in a pure, divine bloodline. From the Old Kingdom to the time of the Ptolemies, the Greek dynasty that ruled Egypt, after Alexander the Great, the tradition of sibling marriage continued. Cleopatra herself, the last pharaoh of Egypt, was married to her younger brother, Ptolemy XIII, in a continuation of this ancient custom designed to consolidate power and maintain the sacred purity of the royal blood. The logic was simple and inescapable. If you are a god, you must marry a goddess, and the purest goddesses were to be found in your own home. This idea, in different forms, echoed through other ancient empires. In the Achaemenid Empire of Persia, it was common for kings and nobles to marry their half-sisters, nieces, or cousins. It was a way of keeping the vast wealth and power of the noble houses contained, preventing the fragmentation of great estates through marriages to outsiders. The bloodline of the elite was seen as a precious resource to be carefully managed and protected. Now, let us let the world of pharaohs and living gods fade and travel forward in time and westward in geography to medieval Europe and specifically to Spain. Here, the concept of divinity has changed. The king is no longer a god on earth, but God's chosen representative. The belief in the special nature of royal blood, however, remains as powerful as ever. It is here that we encounter the famous and often misunderstood concept of blue blood. To understand this idea, we must understand the history of Spain. For nearly 800 years, from the 8th to the 15th century, much of the Iberian Peninsula was under the rule of the Moors, Muslim invaders from North Africa. The Christian kingdoms of the north waged a long, slow, and arduous campaign to reconquer the peninsula, the Reconquista. During this long period of conflict, a powerful ideology of racial and religious purity developed among the Christian nobility of Castile. The Castilian nobles were descended from the Visigoths, a Germanic people with fair skin. They lived in a sunny climate, but their aristocratic lives were not spent toiling in the fields. Their pale skin remained untanned through the thin, almost translucent skin of their wrists and arms. The delicate network of their veins was clearly visible, appearing as a faint blue tracery beneath the surface. This was a physical trait that distinguished them from the darker-skinned Moorish population, and also from the Spanish peasants who worked outside under the sun. And so, the term sangre azul, or blue blood, was born. It was not just a description. It was a declaration. It was a claim to be of pure, unmixed Castilian stock, a lineage uncontaminated by the blood of the Moors, or of the Jewish people, or of commoners. It was a racial and religious badge of honor. To be a blue blood was to be a true old Christian. Your family line stretching back through the centuries of the pure and unbroken. This obsession with purity of blood limpieza, the sangribi, became a central feature of Spanish society. Great families spent fortunes on genealogists to prove their untainted lineage. A single ancestor with the wrong blood could bring disgrace upon a family for generations, and at the apex of this entire system was the royal family itself. Their blood had to be the purest, the bluest of all. Imagine now that you are the king of Spain in the 16th century. Your empire is vast, stretching across Europe and into the New World. Your power is immense, but it is all built on this fragile foundation of blood purity. When it comes time to choose a wife, your options are incredibly limited. She must be of equal royal standing. She must be a devout Catholic, and, most importantly, her bloodline must be as pure and uncontaminated as your own. Marrying a princess from a family with even a whisper of suspect ancestry could undermine the very legitimacy of your throne and the purity of your heirs. Where then do you find such a perfect, pure-blooded bride? The answer, almost inevitably, was within your own extended family. You would look to the royal houses of Portugal or Austria, houses with whom your own family had been intermarrying for generations. Your intended bride was very likely to be your first cousin, or even, in some cases, your niece. Such a marriage was not seen as a transgression. On the contrary, it was seen as the ultimate act of preservation. It was a doubling down on purity, a way of ensuring that the sacred sangre azul remained concentrated and potent. It was a political strategy, a religious statement, and a fulfillment of your most sacred duty. You were not just marrying a relative. You were protecting the very essence of your power, ensuring that the blood that flowed in the veins of the next king of Spain was as blue, as pure, and as powerful as it could possibly be. And so, we end our first exploration here with this foundational concept. From the divine sibling pharaohs of Egypt to the blue-blooded cousins of Spain, the logic, though strange to us, was clear to them. Power was not just a matter of armies and crowns. It was a matter of essence, a quality carried in the blood itself. And this sacred substance was too precious, too powerful, to be mixed with the common clay of the world. It had to be preserved, protected, and concentrated. And the surest way to do that was to keep it all in the family. In our last journey, we settled into the mindset of the ancient rulers, understanding that for them, blood was a sacred substance, a divine essence to be protected at all costs. This belief in purity created the desire to marry within a very small circle. Tonight, we move from the ideological to the practical. We will explore the stark, logistical reality that even if a monarch had wished to marry an outsider, the world in which they lived often made it impossible. We are entering the most exclusive club in history, the royal marriage market of Europe. Let us place you, once again, into a different life. You are no longer a divine pharaoh, but a young princess living in a small but respectable German principality. In the 17th century, your father is a duke, your lineage is impeccable, and you have been raised from birth for a single purpose: to be a pawn in the great game of European politics. Your education has not focused on philosophy or science, but on the skills of a royal bride, languages, music, etiquette, and the complex, intricate dance of courtly life. Above all, you have been taught the geography of your own blood, the map of your extended family that spreads across the continent. From the moment you were born, the question of your marriage has been a matter of state. Ambassadors have written letters, ministers have had quiet conversations, and genealogists have pored over ancient charts, all to answer a single question: who is worthy of your hand? Your own desires, your own hopes for a partner are entirely irrelevant. You are a piece on a chessboard, and your marriage will be a strategic move designed to secure an alliance, neutralize a threat, or elevate your family's status. Now, let us examine the pool of potential candidates. It seems vast at first. Europe is a patchwork of kingdoms, duchies, and principalities. Surely, there are hundreds of eligible young men, but now, we must begin to apply the filters, the strict and unforgiving rules of the royal marriage market. And with each filter, your world and your choices will shrink dramatically. The first filter is rank. You are a high-born princess, the daughter of a reigning duke. You cannot simply marry a wealthy merchant or a handsome but landless knight. Such a match would be a scandal, a mésalliance that would dishonor your family and diminish your own standing. Your husband must be your equal, or at least very nearly your equal. He must be a prince, a duke, an archduke, or a king. This immediately eliminates over 99% of the male population of Europe. Your choices are now limited to the handful of ruling or formerly ruling families who constitute the continent's elite. It is a very small club indeed. The second filter is religion, and it is perhaps the most rigid of all. We are in the century following the great rupture of the Protestant Reformation. Europe is no longer a unified Catholic world. It is a continent divided by a deep and often violent religious schism. Your family is devoutly Lutheran. This means you cannot marry a Catholic. The thought of it is almost inconceivable. A marriage to a prince from Catholic Spain or France or Austria would require one of you to convert. If you converted to Catholicism, your own family would see it as a spiritual betrayal, a turning away from the true faith. If he converted to Protestantism, his own kingdom might erupt in civil war. These were not small matters. The religious faith of a ruler was a matter of national identity and political stability. A Catholic queen in a Protestant country, or vice versa, was a source of constant suspicion, a potential focal point for plots and rebellions. So, the great Catholic houses, the Habsburgs of Spain and Austria, the Bourbons of France, are immediately removed from your list of potential suitors. Likewise, The Protestant houses would not consider a Catholic bride. This single, unyielding rule cuts the already small pool of candidates in half. Your potential husbands must now be not only royal, but also Protestant. The third filter is politics. Your father's duchy, though small, has a complex web of alliances and rivalries. He is allied with the Kingdom of Sweden, but has a long-standing border dispute with the Elector of Saxony. Therefore, any marriage to the Saxon royal house is out of the question. It would be seen as a capitulation, a political defeat. Likewise, marrying into the family of a sworn enemy of your primary ally, Sweden, would be a diplomatic disaster, jeopardizing the treaties that protect your small state. The political landscape of Europe is a constantly shifting sea of intrigue. Alliances are made and broken. A family that is a friend this year might be a rival the next. This requires your father and his ministers to be incredibly careful. A marriage is for life, and it must be a politically astute one. The chosen prince must come from a house that is friendly, stable, and strategically useful. This eliminates several more names from your list. The handsome Prince of Denmark is out, as his father is currently quarreling with the Swedes. The heir to the Duchy of Brandenburg is a possibility, but his family is known for its aggressive expansionism, which makes your father nervous. So, let us review. Your future husband must be a royal, he must be a Protestant, and he must come from a politically acceptable house. After applying these three simple filters, the list of all the eligible men in Europe has been whittled down to perhaps 5 or 6 candidates, 5 or 6 young men scattered across the continent, whom you have never met. And now comes the final, inevitable realization. Who are these 5 or 6 men? You look at their names, their lineages. The young Prince of Brandenburg is your mother's nephew, first cousin. The third son of the King of Sweden is your father's first cousin. The heir to the small principality of Anhalt-Zerbst is your second cousin on your grandmother's side. Suddenly, you understand. The club is so small, so exclusive, and so interconnected that it has become a family. For generations, your ancestors have been applying these same filters, marrying into the same small circle of German and Scandinavian Protestant houses. Your great-grandmother was a Swedish princess. Your grandfather's wife was a Danish duchess. Your own mother is from the House of Brandenburg. The royal families of Protestant Europe are not like separate trees in a forest. They are like a single, ancient banyan tree with 1,000 tangled branches and interconnected roots. Marrying your cousin is not a strange or deviant choice. It is the logical, almost unavoidable conclusion of the system itself. He is not seen primarily as your relative. He is seen as one of the few men on earth who is worthy of you, who meets all the stringent requirements for a suitable match. The shared blood is not a barrier. In a way, it is a comfort. It ensures that the marriage is a reinforcement of an existing family alliance, a predictable and reliable move on the great chessboard. You know his family. You understand their politics. The union is a known quantity, a safe bet in a world of uncertainty. The process of your betrothal is as impersonal as the selection itself. You would likely never see your cousin fiancé before the wedding. The negotiations are handled by ambassadors. A portrait is exchanged. You would study the small, stiff painting of the young man, trying to discern his character from the artist's flattering brushstrokes. Is he kind? Is he cruel? Is he intelligent? The portrait tells you nothing, of course. It is a piece of political propaganda designed to make him look as appealing as possible. He, in his own court, hundreds of miles away, is doing the same with a portrait of you. You are being married not to a man, but to a painting, a name, and a political calculation. The fact that he is also your cousin is almost incidental, a simple consequence of the small and exclusive world you both inhabit. It is the price of purity, the cost of power. Your world is elevated, but it is also a gilded cage, and the bars of the cage are made of your own lineage. And so, when your father informs you that a match has been made, that you are to be married to the Prince of Brandenburg, your first cousin, you would feel no sense of shock or transgression. You would feel a sense of duty, of destiny fulfilled. This is what you were born for. You would spend the next months preparing your trousseau, writing polite, formal letters to a man you have never met, and preparing to leave your home forever, to become the consort in a foreign yet related court. The system was designed to preserve the power and purity of royal blood, but in doing so, it created a closed loop, a self-referential world, where the only suitable partners were the ones you were already connected to by blood. It was not a choice, but a trap, a beautiful, powerful, and inescapable trap of their own making. We have seen how the belief in pure blood created a desire for royal families to marry within their own small circle of partners. Now we move beyond ideology and practicality into the cold, clear realm of high strategy. We will see how marriage was not simply a family affair, but the primary instrument of foreign policy, a tool more powerful than any army. We are no longer just looking at a family tree. We are looking at a grand chessboard, and the pieces are all princes and princesses settle into a new role. You are no longer a young, uncertain princess waiting for her fate to be decided. You are a powerful monarch, a Habsburg emperor sitting in your palace in Vienna or Madrid in the golden age of your dynasty, of Italy, Bohemia, Hungary, and a new world teeming with silver and gold. Your primary duty is not just to maintain this empire, but to strengthen it, to secure it against your rivals, the ambitious kings of France, the Protestant princes of Germany, the Ottoman Sultan to the east. You have armies, of course, great armies of mercenaries and loyal soldiers. But armies are expensive. They drain the treasury. But you, as a Habsburg, have been taught a different, more subtle, and ultimately more effective way of acquiring and holding power. You have been raised on your family's great and guiding motto, Bella Gerant Ali, 2, Felix Austria Nubi. Let others wage war. You, happy Austria, marry. This is the central pillar of your foreign policy. Your children are your greatest strategic assets. A son's marriage can absorb a kingdom. A daughter's marriage can neutralize an enemy. Their wedding vows are your treaties. Their children are your claims to new thrones. You do not think in terms of years or decades, but in terms of generations, of bloodlines. You are not just a ruler. You are a master strategist, and the game you play is for the domination of a continent. Look at the map of Europe spread out on the heavy oak table before you. It is a complex patchwork of territories. Your family, the House of Habsburg, is divided into two main branches. The Spanish branch, ruled by your cousin, the King of Spain, and the Austrian branch, which you rule as Holy Roman Emperor. Your Combined territories form a great ring around your primary rival, the Kingdom of France. Your life's work is to maintain this encirclement, to keep the French contained, to protect the integrity of your vast and scattered lands. How do you do this? You marry. You create a closed loop of power. You have a daughter, a young archduchess, named Mariana. She is bright, pious, and, most importantly, she is a Habsburg, her blood as pure as your own. Your cousin, the King of Spain, Philip IV, is a widower. He needs a new wife to provide him with a male heir to secure the Spanish throne. Cousin Philip. Let us pause and consider this from a modern perspective. You are arranging for your 16-year-old daughter to marry her own maternal uncle, a man 30 years her senior. Astute move you can possibly make. Firstly, it keeps the bloodline pure, as we have discussed. Your daughter will now be the Queen of Spain. Her son, should she have one, will be the next King of Spain. Treaty, but by the most intimate bonds of blood. An attack on Spain will now be an attack on your own grandchildren. The alliance becomes personal, organic, and absolute. Secondly, it keeps the vast inheritance of the Spanish Empire securely within the Habsburg family. If Philip were to marry a French princess, for example, it would give the French a dangerous claim on the Spanish throne. A son from such a union would be half Bourbon, and the French would use that connection to meddle in Spanish affairs, to try and break your encirclement. By marrying his niece, Philip ensures that the next King of Spain is 100% Habsburg. The inheritance is secure. The French are locked out. The personal feelings of your daughter, Mariana, are a secondary consideration, a small and necessary sacrifice for the stability of the continent and the glory of your dynasty. You will summon her to your private study. You will explain to her, in calm and rational terms, the importance of her duty. You will speak of the threat from France, of the need to protect the Catholic faith, of the glory of the House of Austria. She will likely weep. She will be leaving her home, her friends, her familiar court. You will watch her departure with a heavy heart, but also with a sense of grim satisfaction. Are sending a piece of yourself, a vessel of your own sacred blood, to secure the other half of your great empire. It is a painful move, but it is the correct one. The long-term security of the dynasty outweighs the short-term happiness of one individual. This is the cold, hard calculus of kingship. This strategy is repeated again and again, generation after generation, until the family tree of the Habsburgs becomes a dense, interwoven lattice. It is a work of art, a masterpiece of diplomatic engineering. Your Spanish cousin will marry your sister. The web becomes so tight, so interconnected, that the distinction between the Spanish and Austrian branches begins to blur. Web of kinship creates a powerful defensive alliance. The other rulers of Europe know that your families are intertwined. They know that your political interests are inseparable from your family interests. To attack a Habsburg territory is not just to engage an army. It is to start a family feud, to activate a complex network of obligations and alliances that can drag the entire continent into war. Your marriages are your fortress walls, a deterrent more powerful than any cannon. You look at the portraits in your gallery. Your great-grandfather, the Emperor Maximilian I, was the architect of this grand strategy. He married his son into the Spanish royal family, acquiring Spain, kingdoms, He did not conquer these lands with sword and fire. He absorbed them peacefully and permanently through the careful and strategic placement of his children on the marriage market. You are his heir, the inheritor of his grand vision, and you will continue his work. You will pore over the genealogical charts, which are as important to you as any map. You will identify the key vacancies on the thrones of Europe, and you will deploy your children and your nieces and nephews accordingly, like a master puppeteer pulling the strings of a continent. This is why, when you look at your family, you do not just see sons and daughters. You see a political toolkit. You see the future of Europe, and you see that the surest, safest, and most effective way to secure that future is to look not outwards to new and unpredictable alliances, but inwards to the familiar, reliable, and pure-blooded members of your own family. The chess is set, the pieces are in motion, and the game is played not with soldiers, but with wedding rings. The great, sprawling, and dangerously inbred dynasty of the Habsburgs is the result. You see it not as a genetic abnormality, but as the triumphant and logical outcome of a brilliant, multi-generational strategy. And from your perspective, sitting in your palace, surrounded by the evidence of your family's immense power, you are undeniably correct. We have explored the grand stage of European geopolitics, where marriages were the ink that signed the treaties and the glue that held empires together. Now we must zoom in, moving from the emperor's grand map of the continent to a more intimate, but no less important document, the last will and testament of a powerful nobleman. We will leave the rarefied air of high strategy and enter the quiet, wood-paneled study of a duke, where the talk is not of war and peace, but of a subject far more fundamental, property. For if the belief in pure blood was the soul of royal intermarriage and politics was its mind, then the preservation of inheritance was its solid, unshakable skeleton. Take on a new role once more. You are not a king or an emperor, but you are a man of immense power and wealth. Perhaps you are a Grand Duke in Italy, or a powerful Earl in England. Your family has ruled these lands for 500 years. The castle you sit in was built by your ancestor, a famous crusader. The vast, fertile fields that stretch from your window to the horizon are yours. The villages, the forests, the rivers, they all belong to your house. Your name is etched into the very landscape, and you have a problem, a quiet, delicate, and deeply worrying problem. Your only living child is a daughter in the world you inhabit. This is a situation fraught with peril. Your domain is not governed by the strict Salic law of the French, which forbids a woman from inheriting the throne. Here, a woman can inherit. Your daughter, upon your death, will become the duchess, the countess, the ruler of these lands in her own right. She will hold the titles, the wealth, and the power. And because of this, her marriage is the single most important event that will determine the future of your dynasty. You lean back in your heavy oak chair, the leather creaking softly in the quiet room. You stare at the flickering candlelight as it dances across the intricate tapestry on the wall, a tapestry that depicts your family's coat of arms, the rampant lion, the crossed swords, the chevron of gold. This is the symbol of your house, the visual representation of your lineage, and it is this very symbol that is now under threat. If your daughter marries an outsider, say, the second son of a duke from a neighboring territory, what happens upon your death? She will inherit your lands, of course, but her husband will become the new master of the house, the duke by right of marriage. Their children, your grandchildren, will not carry your name. They will carry his. They will not fly your banner with the rampant lion. They will fly his. In a single generation, your ancient and noble house will be extinguished. Your lands, your castle, your wealth, all of it will be absorbed into his dynasty. Your family name will become a historical footnote, a maternal line on your grandson's genealogical chart. The thought is unbearable. It is an erasure. It is the end of everything your ancestors fought and bled for. This is the inheritance trap. Your love for your daughter is real, but it is overshadowed by your duty to your lineage. You must find a solution, a way to ensure that your lands and your name survive. And as you sit there, in the quiet of your study, looking at the family portraits on the wall, the solution presents itself, as it has to countless noblemen before you. It is elegant, it is simple, and it is standing right there in a portrait next to your own. It is your nephew, your younger brother's son. He is a fine young man, strong and capable, and most importantly, he carries your name. He is of your blood. The plan forms in your mind a perfect and logical solution to an otherwise unsolvable problem. You will arrange a marriage between your daughter, the heiress, and your nephew. Union. When you die, your daughter inherits everything. She becomes the duchess. Her husband, your nephew, becomes the duke. Their children, your grandchildren, will be of your house, carrying your family name. The lands remain under the control of your dynasty. The wealth is not divided or lost to another family. It is consolidated, made even stronger. The rampant lion will continue to fly over the castle walls for another generation. The inheritance trap has been sprung, your legacy secured. This is not a matter of romance. It is a business transaction, a merger. You will summon your lawyers, men in sober black robes who speak in the dry, precise language of contracts and entails. You will spend weeks, even months, negotiating the marriage contract with your brother. The document will be a masterpiece of legal protection. It will list, in painstaking detail, every castle, every manor, every field, every forest that your daughter brings to the union. It will specify how the titles are to be held, how the lands are to be managed, and how they will be passed down to the next generation. It is a prenuptial agreement for dynasties. The personal feelings of your daughter and your nephew are a minor, almost irrelevant part of the negotiation. They have been raised to understand that their personal desires are secondary to the needs of the house. Their duty is to the bloodline, to the name, to the land. This practice was the bedrock of aristocratic and royal stability for centuries. It was a deeply conservative strategy designed to do one thing: to prevent change, to hold on to what you have. We can see this logic played out in the highest circles of power. Consider the case of Maria, the first of Portugal in the 18th century. She was the heiress to the Portuguese throne. To ensure that the throne did not pass to a foreigner, and to elevate her future husband to the status of a king, a marriage was arranged with the most suitable man available. That man was her own uncle, who became King Peter III upon their marriage. The union was not seen as scandalous. It ensured that the crown of Portugal remained in the hands of a Portuguese prince of the House of Braganza. The fear of what could happen if an heiress married an outsider was a lesson written in the history books of every royal house. The most famous example, one that you, the Duke, would know well, was that of Spain in the late 15th century, when Queen Isabella I of Castile, an heiress in her own right, married Ferdinand II of Aragon. They united their kingdoms and created the foundation of modern Spain. Their daughter, Joanna, was their heiress. Her marriage was the single most important diplomatic event of the age. She was married to Philip the Handsome of the House of Habsburg. When Joanna inherited the throne of Spain, her Habsburg husband became its king, and their son, the Emperor Charles V, inherited not only Spain, but also the vast Habsburg lands of his father. In a single generation, through the marriage of an heiress, the immense kingdom of Spain had been absorbed into the even more immense Habsburg Empire. This was the great fear of every ruler, that their precious, hard-won lands could be lost not on the battlefield, but in the bedchamber. The marriage of a daughter was a moment of immense vulnerability, a potential drain of power and wealth. And so, the cousin marriage, or the uncle-niece marriage, became a defensive strategy. It was a way of plugging the leak, of ensuring that the family's wealth, which they viewed as a finite and precious resource, would be endlessly recycled within the family itself, growing more concentrated and more powerful with each generation. You look around your study. You see the leather-bound ledgers that detail the income from your estates, the rents from your tenant farmers, the profits from your forests, the tolls from your rivers. It is a vast fortune, an engine of immense power. The thought of this wealth passing to another family is what keeps you awake at night. It is not greed in your mind, it is prudence. It is your duty to the ancestors who built this fortune to ensure it is not squandered, and so the decision is made. The contracts are drawn up and signed. The engagement of your daughter to your nephew is announced. There will be a great wedding, a celebration of the union of the two most important branches of your great house. And as you watch them stand at the altar, you will feel a profound sense of peace and satisfaction. You have navigated the treacherous waters of the inheritance trap. You have ensured that your name, your lands, and your legacy will endure. You have sacrificed the principle of new blood for the certainty of old blood. It is a trade you and 1,000 other rulers like you are more than willing to make. The future of the house is secure, founded on a contract, a title, and a marriage between two young people who share the same grandparents. For centuries, the great royal houses of Europe pursued their intricate strategies of intermarriage with a singular, rational focus. They were playing a grand game, and the prize was power, purity, and the permanence of their own dynasty. But beneath this surface of political success, a different kind of accounting was taking place. An unseen biological ledger was keeping track of every union, and now we must turn our attention to the final, tragic bill as it came due. Let us take on our final role. You are a court physician in the Alcazar of Madrid in the latter half of the 17th century. You are a man of science, as it is understood in your time, and your charge is the health of the most powerful family in the world, the Spanish Habsburgs. Your work is a study in frustration. You are surrounded by a pattern of illness that you can observe but cannot explain. The royal nursery is a place of constant sorrow with a staggering rate of infant mortality. The children who do survive are often frail and sickly. And then there are the physical traits that mark the family. Most notably, the famous Habsburg jaw. You see it in the portraits and in the living faces of the court. The lower jaw juts out so far that it makes closing the mouth, chewing, and speaking a laborious effort. You see this not as a defect, but as the unique stamp of their noble blood. You do not and cannot understand that it is the result of recessive genes, which in the shallow, endlessly recycled gene pool of the Habsburgs have become dominant, turning a family signature into a debilitating deformity. All of these tragic hereditary threads now converge on a single, final, and catastrophic figure, your primary patient, the King of Spain, Charles II, the product of generations of close-kin marriage. Charles was a weak and sickly child. He did not walk until he was 8 or speak until he was 4. His jaw was so severely deformed that he could barely be understood, and he struggled with constant illnesses. As a man and a king, his condition was a national tragedy. His subjects, lacking a genetic understanding, did not call him Charles the Wise, but El Hechizado, the Bewitched. They believed his profound physical and intellectual disabilities were the result of a curse. Priests performed exorcisms in his chambers, seeking a supernatural cause for a biological certainty. The very marriage strategy that produced him was the one thing never questioned. Your life is a long vigil over the king's decline. You watch as he endures 2 marriages, both politically important, but both barren. It becomes clear that the king is sterile. The great Habsburg dynasty, which sacrificed so much for its inheritance, has produced an heir who cannot produce an heir. The relentless pursuit of purity has resulted in a genetic ruin. In the year 1700, Charles II dies, leaving no successor. His death plunges Europe into the bloody war of the Spanish Succession. The dynasty that built its empire through marriage was ultimately destroyed by it. You have been a witness to the end of an era, to the slow, agonizing, and self-inflicted death of a great house. The death of Charles II of Spain was a quiet but seismic event, a cautionary tale that echoed through the courts of Europe. It did not immediately end the practice of royal intermarriage, but it was the beginning of a slow, gradual awakening. As we enter the 18th and 19th centuries, we find ourselves in a world that is beginning to think differently. Imagine you are now a monarch in this new era. Like Queen Victoria of Great Britain, the world you rule is vastly different. The rise of nationalism has changed the political map, and the rigid religious divides of the past have begun to soften in the world of high diplomacy. The old Habsburg strategy of creating a closed, fortified loop of power now seems dangerously insular. Your goal is the opposite, to spread your family's influence as widely as possible, to weave a vast, interconnected web of kinship that will link all the great houses of Europe. You marry your 9 children into the royal families of Germany, Russia, Denmark, and beyond, becoming known as the grandmother of Europe. Your strategy is not to concentrate your bloodline, but to export it, creating a great family of nations meant to foster peace. This shift was made possible by a changing world. A new romantic idea that marriage should involve personal affection was taking hold. At the same time, the principles of animal husbandry were becoming more widely understood. Even without a formal science of genetics, the aristocracy knew that constantly breeding in and in often led to weakness and a lack of vigor. The practical knowledge from the farm was slowly seeping into the consciousness of the palace. Of course, this new strategy had its own unforeseen genetic consequences. You, Queen Victoria, were a carrier for hemophilia, and the very marriages you arranged to promote peace spread this royal disease to the ruling families of Russia and Spain, with tragic historical results. The ancient link between blood and destiny had not been broken, only changed. And so, the practice of close-skin marriage did not end on a single day. It simply, slowly, faded away. The political reasons for it became less compelling, and the scientific and social arguments against it grew stronger. The world changed, and the small, exclusive club of royalty was forced to open its doors. As we conclude our journey, we can look back at this strange custom with a clearer understanding. It was not born of malice, but of a cold, rational logic, rooted in a worldview that is now alien to us. It was a system built on the fear of losing power, purity, and identity. For centuries, it worked, but it was a system that carried within it the seeds of its own destruction, a biological time bomb that ticked away silently in the very blood they sought to preserve. The story of royal intermarriage is a quiet reminder that even the most powerful people in the pursuit of permanence can become trapped in a cage of their own making.